presented by Prize Picks. Get $50 instantly when you play $5 with the promo code. Welcome to Light Years. Andy Liu, we're so close to Steve Kerr, but shout out, happy birthday, coach.
Oh, happy birthday.
Steve Kerr and Dunleavy talked to the media yesterday. Players will talk to the media Monday. Camp is literally starting immediately. We're here. We're back.
The first preseason game is October 5th. It is literally next Saturday. It is, yeah, literally a week away.
8 days.
I mean, come on.
Great.
Let's go.
They're going to Hawaii. Gonna bond. Gonna have a good time. I want to go. I want to go to Hawaii.
Where in Hawaii are they going? Do you know?
The game, I'm almost positive the game's on the Big Island. So
yeah. Don't think I've ever been to the Big Island. Interesting. I don't know why.
Most of my excursions there have been Maui or Oahu too.
So, facts. So the game is in Hawaii, which again I didn't know. I should know this. So the game is in Hawaii. That's why they're doing Hawaii the week before. Right? Look how serious they're taking it. They're saying the body clock. You know, they don't. It's like NFL, right? They're trying to get the body clock right. You know, they don't want to be all. They don't want to. Big game Clippers. You know, you think Kawhi's gonna play? You think Kawhi's gonna be locked in for the first preseason game? So,
No, they're just. I mean, Steve Kerr mentioned it. He's like, it's gonna be nice to do camp away from the facility. They're trying to, we can get more team building, get some bonding with the families. And it's like, I don't know if that's all real, but I too would tell my boss not to get a free trip to Hawaii. So, and just, it is Steve Kerr's birthday today. So I give him a little, Steve won me over this summer with Team USA. I will now, watching the way he pissed off all Celtics fans online, I just got to stand. I got from here on forward, he makes no wrong decisions. You think he's being unfair to Moses Moody? No, he's right. Moses Moody is wrong. That is the angle I'm going forward.
How long do you think that lasts until he plays like a Kyle Anderson, Looney, Draymond 3-4-5 to close a game and they lose by a couple points? How long do you think that lasts? I
was thinking the opposite. I was thinking D'Anthony Melton at the 4. Something like that. Yeah, the Steve Kerr special, you get Steph, Pods, GP2, Melton, and Looney. Something like that.
Sweet lineup. Kind of a sweet lineup. Kind of like that. A lot of defense. I love it.
One of you has to be able to guard the ball. Come on, man. They talked to media. So let's just go through it a little bit. I feel like the big takeaway on the Steve Kerr front, more than anything, was, new year. He didn't talk too much about Clay, but it was a lot of it's going to be different lineups this year. It's not the same old Warriors. We're going to have to find ways to play different than we have in the past. Obviously, they have a little less shooting. Just, whatever you think of where Clay is at in his career, he still commands attention in a way that none of the other guys do as a shooter, So he's at least acknowledging it. Do you believe him on that front? Do you believe they're actually going to play different, or do you think he's going to do what he's done in the past, which is, Buddy Hield, you're the closest thing I got to a Klay Thompson, so you're playing 30 minutes a game because I want that shooter spacing. You know what I'm saying?
That would be extremely concerning if that actually happened. You just name my worst nightmare right there. That is my worst nightmare, is Buddy Hield playing 30 minutes a game. He'll help the team, but I believe it. I believe that they want this team to be a much better, back to defense is kind of, I believe, where they really want to go. And it makes sense with the guys that they got. It really does. I mean, Kyle Anderson and D'Anthony Melton are two guys that are going to help this team defensively. It's not going to be one person. You're not going to get one guy to lift. They have that guy. They have Draymond. They have the guy. So I do believe that they feel like defensively they're going to be much better than they were last year. And it does make sense the way that they built this team, though. It's just last year they didn't build the team in a way that allows them to play defense. You're just not going to when you got two guards that are barely 6 feet. I know Steph's actually 6'3", but like Chris Paul's 6 feet. You just can't play defense, right? Unless Chris Paul's 29 years old, he's not 28 years old. So I believe him. The roster makes sense. Whether they get there, though, I guess is the question, and that'll depend on who they allocate those minutes to, like you said.
Yeah, so like Steve's here saying, they asked him who the starters will be, and he makes this classic Kerr joke. Great question. Up in the air. Pretty confident I'll start Steph. Like, ha 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 ha. Like, so it's Steph, Draymond, and which three of you guys are going to fit the best is probably what the question is right now, right?
It would be concerning to me if Wiggins isn't starting. Like that means he's just not good. Like he should be starting. They need him to be good enough to start. If he's not good enough to start, then what are we doing here? But you're right. Yeah. I mean, some right. I think that's fair for him to say that. I mean, you're also getting paid a bunch of money, so you should be starting. The other ones to me. Oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like kind of the Wiggins is presumptively a starter. To your point, if he's not starting, something really bad is going on. So that's three guys there. So then the question is, who are the other two? And like in his other interviews, he's talked about it. He doesn't see Kuminga as a 3 unless they have a stretch big. And I don't see a stretch big on this roster unless Looney wows us, but probably not going to happen. Right. So like it comes back to the classic. Do you start small with Draymond at the 5 and Kuminga at the 4 and Wiggins at the 3? A bunch of wings and athleticism, but Draymond's at the 5. Or do you put Kuminga on the bench and start Trace or Looney, kind of have more traditional size, even though they're not really centers, but they play like centers, and go that route? So, these are the questions. We're not even talking about the 2-guard spot. Like, do you start Pods for playmaking and ball handling, or do you have Melton just have a ball hawk there? Theoretically, could you start Buddy Hield just for shooting? I'm actually less concerned about the 2-guard spot, if I'm being honest with you. I think the more telling one is do they?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I kind of expect him to mix and match Melton Pods matchup based anyway. And to your point, yeah, like that 3-guard rotation, I like it. The real question is
yes,
I think he has to start Kuminga. But then they have to start small if they're doing that with this roster. And how does that go? Does that wear down over time? How long can you get away with that? You know what I'm saying? Before Draymond gets too tired.
Because that's one of my, and that's the roster construction stuff based on the players that they have, is Kuminga and Wiggins essentially do the same thing, or theoretically they do the same thing. And if those guys do the same thing, then you're forced to play them like the Celtics have it where they have 2 wings. All right. They have 2 wings, which is where I think the Warriors, I bet you that's, if their coaching staff and front office got together and they're envisioning a great season, they're probably envisioning, Kuminga being that version of Jason Tatum, right? And Wiggins being that version of Jaylen Brown or whatever, mix and match it. But that's what they're envisioning. But you got to put Kristaps Porzingis next to him to really unlock it, right? You need the floor stretcher, which they don't have. They have Draymond Green, who's an elite defender, and then next to that, he's small, and then next to that, you have Steph. And I'm gonna guess that they're gonna go with Anthony Melton. Sam, it just defensively, I think it just makes sense for them to go that route. So, but then to your point, if they're gonna go that route, do they have enough size and for all that fun stuff? I actually think it's pretty fun. We can go through 50 iterations, but this is the roster that they have. I think it's pretty fun. To your point, I don't think they can go wrong at the 2 Pods or D'Anthony Melton. I don't think Hield's really, and it'd be crazy to me if they started Hield. I think it's between Pods and Melton. And then I think the real question, I 100% agree with you. The real question is it Trayce Jackson-Davis or is it Kuminga? Because you could make an argument that it should be TJD and that Kuminga you can use his offense and lock into his offense a lot better off the bench. But you can also make an argument that, it gets a little clunky with Draymond and TJD and if Wiggins isn't shooting well, right? So there's a lot of question marks on this team,
and I think that you're not even hitting on what I think the biggest issue is. Kuminga's playing for a contract. Yes, they said they'd like to get him locked up, but I'm not convinced. I don't know if they will at this point. How's he going to take to coming off the bench? Is that going to be an issue with your roster going forward? He obviously sees himself as a future star. I still think he's going to be the second leading scorer on this team. I just think he's the second. He's the second most natural scorer on this team. Just in terms of he wants to score the ball. He thinks score first all the time. I think you run the risk of locker room issues if he's coming off the bench too. And again, this is the roster they've made. He needs to play, and there's just not really any way to start him if it's not at the 4, given his shooting. or lack of
Well,
shooting.
there is, yeah. I mean,
even
I
if
think there's
even if
the
he
point.
becomes like a good shooter, he won't become a good enough shooter to play the three. Like Siakam can shoot the ball, but you'd never in a million years want to play him at the three because that's not what he is, right?
Insane.
Mm-hmm.
I think though there is an argument, and this is why I find it so fascinating going into the season, because I do think they've built a roster that I think fits Steve Kerr's MO better than they did last season. Or at least not the Steve Kerr's MO. I just mean the Warriors MO, which is play really good defense. Because people I think forget that through the championship years is that Steph bails them out on offense a lot. It's the defense that really, really was consistently great. Is that, hey, look, if Podziemski, if you want to start, you want to stay on the court, D'Anthony Melton, you want to start, you want to stay at Wiggins, you want to stay on the court, Kuminga, you want to stay on the court, make that money. You got to play defense. You got to make it so that you give Steve Kerr no choice but to keep you on the court. And that's with defense, right? And I think Melton healthy plays great defense. Wiggins healthy in shape plays great defense. Podziemski, I think is really smart on defense. How good is he going to be on defense in year 2? Let's see. Kuminga, right? We talk about this. Like theoretically, very good. Theoretically, he could just be Wiggins on defense at his health, right? He could just be very good on defense, but we haven't seen that. TJD, like great, like solid help side guy, but like how good can he be on defense? So I think all these guys have question marks. All these,
and that's kind of where getting Kyle Anderson and D'Anthony Melton really help, because those are veteran defenders, vocal defenders too. If you ever watch Kyle Anderson play, he does the same things Draymond does. Obviously not to the same level, but he's pointing out where everyone needs to be. He's communicating. They talk so much about how they miss Andre Iguodala and how quiet they are if it isn't Draymond telling everyone where to be. And it's probably true. Kuminga's too young. Kuminga's not going to be directing his teammates around. Wiggins is just not that guy. He's never been that guy. And to expect him to be that guy now is just foolish. They had pods directing people where to go defensively. Gotta love the effort, but it's like he's a rookie. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You need some veterans who can kind of communicate and do more on the defensive end. So I think that'll play into it too. You mentioned Wiggins.
I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, you mentioned Wiggins. You mentioned Wiggins, and he was one of the bigger focus areas of their conversation. I'm going to play Steve's clip just so we can react to it. Oops, I should prep.
I've only seen him the last couple of days since he got back in town, but number one, he looks physically really fit. I think he also looks. Just speaking with him, he sounds very motivated. He's very much at peace. I think he's in a place where he knows the last couple of years have been tough for a lot of reasons, and I think he's primed to get back to where he was a couple of years ago. He's at the age where he's right in his physical prime, and we've seen him do it. He helped us win a championship. So I'm expecting a big year from Wiggs, and I think there's also a void that is left by Clay's absence that we need to fill. That's a lot of points to score, but it also means we have to rethink how we're doing things. And Wiggs will be featured for sure. He's a guy who's proven he's a 20-point a night guy, and we're going to be relying on him heavily.
Steve. Dunleavy said similar, just to be clear, and I don't need to play it back, but he just said, he looks in great shape. So the first call out is we all know he wasn't in shape last year. So good to know that, he's in good shape there. Curious your thoughts on what Steve was saying there.
It feels like they're putting a little pressure on him, honestly. I mean, they're saying they're going to feature him. They're saying he's in great shape. They're saying, kind of like they're missing a lot of points, that he needs to go score a lot of points. They don't really talk about Andrew Wiggins like that normally, so I find that interesting. So I think either they really believe in him, which I do think they really believe that he is going to bounce back. You can't be worse than you were last year. But there's a part of it where I think they are putting a little pressure. It's like, hey man, like let's be better than we were last year. So I'm optimistic only because, Sam, they won 46 games last year and Andrew Wiggins wasn't good. Regardless of what happened, he wasn't good. And they won 46 games. So it's like, shit. I mean, hell, that's cool, right? Like that's cool if he's going to be better. I mean, let's say he's 75% of 2022, which, by the way, I think that's a realistic thing. It's just like, hey, get to 75% of that year that you were one of the best two-way wing guys. I mean, shit, man, it's good for the Warriors. Great for the Warriors.
If he's averaging 20, this team won't be above 500. I'll tell you that right now.
A lot of shots, right? It's like the Buddy Hield thing, right?
He's never averaged 18 points per game on a playoff team. I'm not saying he's not going to score, but the Warriors were best when he's a third, fourth option.
Right.
And there's nights where he goes for 25, but his primary responsibility is defense and playing off of the main guys. When he was featured in Minnesota, he was, inefficient because he's not Kevin Durant. Like, shocker, there's not a lot of Kevin Durants out there, right? He's just not. He's not that guy. So if they're really featuring him with mid-post touches,
it's crazy.
That's like a way. He's gonna shoot 40% from the field. It's gonna be inefficient. I don't believe him. I agree with you. I think it's Steve trying to motivate him. I think both of them. Like, look, what do we know about Wiggins? He's a low-key guy, so teammates like him because he's not, not dramatic, like being like, give me the ball, that sort of thing, right? So that's a positive. But on the flip side, he does have a propensity to be low motor and float out of games. That was his reputation up until 2022. 2022, he rewrote the narrative on himself. Like, if I'm engaged, I can be very good. And since then, for whatever reason, he's gone back to being Minnesota Wiggs, where, everyone knows the tools, but it's like, how many games have you watched Wiggins over his career where you're like, man, he's just kind of floating out there. He's just floating, right? That sort of thing. So to me, it's all like, hey, man, let's just lock in, play hard, defend, hit your shots. If we aren't good enough, don't let it be because of your effort, don't let it be because of that thing. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it. And like the second part of it is, I mean, he has been in trade rumors. They kept him out of the Olympics because they wanted to trade him.
I forgot. That's right.
He's not stupid. Every player knows when they're in trade rumors, particularly veteran guys. So they didn't trade him. I'm not surprised, given that I'm sure the offers they were getting, they basically made the mental calculus of we like our chances of getting him back to what he is more than what they're offering us for him. So that's the bet they're making. So now they have to do it.
I don't think that's a bad. I don't think that one's a bad bet. I would say I probably agree with that one. Because I totally forgot that I made the prediction that he was not going to be on the roster come the training camp.
So did
2 months ago. Yeah, I totally forgot, and I am a little surprised that he's still on the roster. Which tells me that, I mean, what do you think what do you think teams were offering for Andrew Wiggins? Like maybe like like another bad contract, maybe only a year on it, but like maybe a protected first, like a second, maybe at best, right? Like,
I think they were asking the Warriors to give the pick. Honestly, that's kind of what's always been floated. It's like, we'll give you this expiring contract, but you have to give us a pick for taking Wiggins' contract.
Yeah,
like
you're not getting
it's pretty low value. Like when you had the last 2 years he did, you're getting into like Ben Simmons territory where other teams are like, do I really want this guy? Like that sort of thing. And you can say it's unfair or it's not, but it's the reality of the way these teams operate.
Well, that's why he's on the roster. Now, I'm betting on Wiggins more than I'm betting on Ben Simmons. I don't bet on anything though, so I wouldn't bet on either. But
the Ben Simmons train is far gone.
Yeah, or even Ben Simmons coming back to play basketball, right? That's
how I know camp's around the corner. You see the Ben Simmons is cleared, ready to go. I'm like, I'm sure. I'm waiting for that like first preseason practice. Back aggravated, he's gone. So
did you see like Chris Haynes tweet that or something? I was just like, what are we like? What
it's
are we?
It's like the Shaq meme. You can't fool me. I'm familiar with your game.
I'm too familiar. I think final piece on this one is the point about Wiggins and 20 points. Yeah, I think that one was kind of insane because it's the same thing with Buddy Hield. It's like how many because he's brought in to be the scorer. So it's like the obvious vet scorers on this team outside of Steph is Andrew Wiggins and Buddy Hield. Those guys are accomplished scorers. And it's like, well, if they're gonna score more than their career averages, not a good thing. Because that means you're doing something wrong. You're putting them in a position that it's like, why is Buddy Hield shooting 20 times a game? Like the team's probably a 20-win team. You know what I mean? Like he should not be doing that. Same with Wiggins. If Wiggins is scoring 20 points on 32% from three, right? That's not good. That's on volume, right? Some players on volume, they probably like we're hoping Pods on volume becomes better. We're hoping Kuminga on volume becomes better. Like it can sustain who they can become. With guys like Wiggins and Hield, we know on volume it doesn't get better.
They've played for 10 years. They've played for 10 years. They are who they are. In Wiggins' case, if he's right, he's very good, averaging 17 points, rebounding, hitting open shots, and defending. Very good. Yeah. So it's not that, but it's like, yeah, to your point, they really need Kuminga to go from 16 to 20 and not lose efficiency. We don't know what Kuminga is going to be full. Like, I think he's going to be a 20-point per game scorer, but we don't know. Whereas like with Buddy Hield, I know if he's playing 35 minutes, okay, you're a terrible defensive team and it's volume scoring. And to your point, you're in the lottery. You're in the lottery, right?
It is kind of
if Wiggins is doing the Minnesota thing, like we saw what that was in Minnesota.
It is kind of insane. I know it's this era of the NBA is kind of nuts with the scoring, but Kuminga 16 points in 26 minutes. Imagine if he played 35 minutes. How many points would he average? Like 24? I know I've not been the biggest like advocate, but it's like, man, the kid could average like 24 points.
I mean,
and he's like 21 years old. So it's kind of 22 years old. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah, I kind of feel really confident he'll average 20 on the same efficiency we've seen in the past. For him, it's more about like, is it the good 20? Yep. Like, are you also rebounding? Are you also defending? Are you making the right reads? Or are you an empty calorie 20 like Jalen Green? You know, like I think Houston's dealing with the problem of they just let him go out there and do whatever he wants. And now he just has a bunch of bad habits. The Warriors went the opposite way with Kuminga. And hopefully this is the year that, you know, they bear the fruits of being tough on him. You know, that's the hope. The hope is you were tough on him and didn't allow him to do that. So he learned he has to play the right way. But, you know, let's
Steve Kerr, happy birthday, Steve Kerr. He is the GOAT of the long game. He is. All right.
Hey, Steve's like, hey, if it's not happening in year 4, I'm happy to sit here, bench you, and wait for year 5, buddy.
Right.
I got all the time in the world.
Jesus Christ.
I hope that doesn't happen.
You just made my Friday terrible. Late Years Podcast, we're brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the number. Get in on the daily action with your friends. Become part of the PrizePicks community today. Actually, this is the best time of the year for PrizePicks, objectively, because basketball's coming back. Yeah.
You got everything. You got football, you got baseball, playoffs, you got basketball. Best sports month of the year.
It really is. Like every night you can get on there and you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into $1,000. Look, get $50 instantly when you play $5. Use promo code LightYears, right? So you got the standard props I show you guys every week. And you got a couple more days left here. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. You got 1 more week of Caleb Williams, 1 passing yard.
It's a free square. It's a free square.
Free square. Only 1 yard. Come on.
You basically only have to pick one thing right in conjunction with that, and you win.
Can't be that hard. So if you think Tyreek Hill will get more than 90.5 yards in week 1, that's got to be. I mean, who's his quarterback? Me? You? Aaron Jones will run more than 66.5 yards. Cook up hot takes with your friends. Win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on PrizePicks. So download the PrizePicks app today, guys. Use the code LightYears for a first deposit match up to $100. Code LightYears on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, run your game.
Yeah. So let's talk a little Dunleavy. Look, all the stuff on the player side, him and Steve were lockstep, so I don't see a point in really going over it. You can it's the same thing. One thing he did say that was super interesting was on trade talks. Look, man, they were in trade talks all offseason. Lowry Markkanen, Paul George, we knew about it, and that's kind of like dovetailing back to what you were saying about Wiggins. Surprised he's on the roster. So let's listen to this real quick.
Discipline that you have to have, and not gonna. There's no point in going all in to be, suddenly above average. We're gonna go all in. You got to feel like you're all in. So that's how we'll kind of judge and evaluate things, and we'll see what's there. So I guess that's we're probably as impatient as a franchise as you can be right now, given our time horizon and all that. But there's a fine line between impatience and undiscipline. And I think I feel good about the discipline that we held this summer and the roster we built, the growth from within that we're going to have. And so we're in a good spot heading this year. And I know everybody's always looking for big headline breaking news and all that, but I really like this team.
You mentioned the impatience. I mean, do you enter the season already knowing like you are probably going to want to make some roster maneuvers at some point, or are you sitting back like really wanting a large sample of what this team is?
Yeah, I think we got to see what this team is. It's a really talented team. I think there's a lot of ways we can be good, which is exciting. And, we have a generational talent, Steph Curry. We got Draymond Green, who's just one of the more unique all-around players in the NBA. And then after that, we've just got a ton of different pieces and depth and youth and experience and just all the things you want in a team. We'll take a look at it. We'll see where we're at. The good news is we've got plenty of ways to get better from the outside, but right now we're fully behind this team, and we think they're going
Plenty of ways to get better from the outside. Interesting. What's that mean?
That means we're doing Jimmy Butler trade episodes, baby. No.
Yeah, what the hell is that? What's that mean? Interesting quotes.
One thing I always appreciate about Dunleavy, obviously he says like we got generational talent and Steph Curry, duh. But then he always mentions Draymond afterwards. I know there's a lot of fans who are kind of tired of Draymond, but can't ignore the fact that like he's one of the most unique defensive pieces of all time, and he's generational in his own way. So I appreciate that.
He knows where his bread is buttered. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
I got a little Bob Myers to him. Is what he is.
Thin line between impatience and undiscipline. Did he say that off the cuff, or did a marketing PR firm pull that together? That's a good line.
Banger line, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good line.
Indiscipline's not a word though, is it? It's not actually a word.
I think it was undisciplined, to be honest. Impatience or was it impatience and indiscipline, or impatience and undiscipline? It doesn't matter. You know the point.
I yesterday in a corporate call I used the word solutionizing. I don't even know if that's a word. So it's like Dunleavy, sometimes you just pull a word out of your ass and it's great. It feels like he's shooting an arrow across Warriors Twitter, Warriors fans kind of saying like make a trade. If like this is for Andy Liu, right? If we can't get Paul George, get Zach LaVine. Make the trade. And I think this quote is specifically for that, right? Specifically saying, just because we can't get the big fish, and it's Paul George, it's Lowry Markkanen, doesn't mean we have to make a trade to make trade's sake. And I think a lot of people, myself included, were saying, look, man, you got to shake things up for whatever reason. Yeah. And they did not. This quote, I think, speaks directly to that.
It gets back to the Wiggins thing. He basically said, he's like, we're not going to go all in on a trade that we don't think makes us a contender. So he's basically saying, okay, I trade Wiggins and a pick for LaVine. We're not a contender. And all we've done is bleed assets. So I'd rather hold on to Wiggins and see what I have. I get it logically. Emotionally, I'm frustrated because I want to see more movement on this team. Like just full transparency. Like I wanted to see more of a shakeup. But yeah, he's kind of telling everyone like they're not going to do it unless it's the right move. Which like, I mean, should we count out all like non-KD? Jimmy Butler. Well, I know they're not the same caliber player, but they're both superstar. Like, should we just count anyone other than like those type of players like out? Like they're not going to do it?
Yeah, we should. It's like Kyle Kuzma's not going to be on this team. I bet you they didn't even entertain the thought, right? We didn't really entertain the thought either. Yeah.
Cam Johnson will not be on.
Cam Johnson. That's the other guy, the Nets guy, right? So it's like, we had this like really good discussion a month ago about it. It's like, yes, they could make those trades if they had moved off their lottery picks early and been creative around that. But for where they are today, the team that Mike Dunleavy took over a year ago, they do not have a war chest of assets to go and get a Cam Johnson, because if they take that asset out, there's nothing in the war chest. Now it's a water gun fight that they're going into if they want to get a Jimmy Butler or a Kevin Durant.
Yeah, that's the way they see it. They see that they really only have the assets to make one legitimate move. So it needs to be a right move. And we can talk about all the mismanagement in the past to get here. I don't really see the point anymore.
Yeah,
we've said it enough. We've said it enough. It's I think the thing that concerns me mostly here is they really will only make a move unless they can fleece the opponent. It feels very Giantsy to me, where it's kind of like if a young player is playing well, we can't trade him. He's our future, even though it's unclear what to do with him, But
Get me started.
if he's not playing well, you're mad that no one's willing to give you their best player for him, So it's like if Kuminga pops, they don't want to trade him because, oh my God, look how good he is. But if Kuminga, struggles, they're like, well, no one wants him. We can't trade it. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like the rodeo of indecision, which to me ultimately comes back to a lack of conviction. It ultimately comes back to, do you know what you're watching? Or do you have the balls to like make a bet that you're right on something? Or do you just are you just cowering? You're more concerned with not being wrong than taking a chance at being right.
I hope that they've built more conviction the last couple of years based on what's happened. That's my hope. And I think what you're saying.
Well, who's they? Who's they?
It's a great question. So it feels like Joe Lacob always has conviction, right? Like he talks like he always has conviction, doesn't he? So that's kind of the part where I'm a little like, it just the actions are different. I think the lack of conviction actually speaks to the lack of synchronization between front office and the coaching staff. Actually, I think that's the lack of conviction. I think Joe wants to do what he wants to do. The problem is I think Steve wants to do what he wants to do. And that's been kind of the problem. Now it feels like it's year 4 of Kuminga, right? It's year 4 of this.
Let's just call it what it is too. Who are the lead basketball decision makers? Mike, he's a first-time GM. Joe's son, Joe's other son. So where's the lack of, you know what I'm saying? Like it's always about Joe. And to be fair, like ultimately the buck always stops at the owner. A's fans know it doesn't matter how smart your front office is if your owner sucks. Like that's the reality. And to be clear, Joe Lacob is not a bad owner. Just to make that clear. But like the point is that, but it's like, who is in the front office? Who is it? Who are making this? Is Dunleavy too soft? Does he not have enough like chutzpah to push back at the Lacobs? Or are the Lacobs too controlling and they're not wanting to make a deal? Or like, I don't know. I guess the only point I'm trying to make is it's not 2014. It's not Bob Myers, Jerry West, Travis Schlenk as your three-headed monster of basketball decision makers. It's Mike Dunleavy who took over a year ago, and he's probably thinking the same thing anyone does when they get a promotion. I need to be careful so I don't get fired. And Kirk's his assistant GM, and we don't really know who else is around there making those decisions. So think of that what you want, but it's like, I don't know. When I hear this sort of stuff, it's hard for me to not be cynical and be like, I think Jimmy Butler is going to come available, and I think you're going to do the same thing you did with Paul George and Lowry, where you're like, the price isn't right. We can't do it, which is a lack of conviction.
You think Jimmy Butler comes available?
I do, because it seems like Pat Riley's fed up. Man, I don't think he wants to give him the contract. I would bet on him. I would bet on him over KD coming available, but maybe KD does too, because you never know. And I'd also bet on Jimmy over LeBron. I just don't think LeBron's ever going to leave LA. I don't know why we're focused on just the old dudes, but fuck it,
Fuck it. What are they going to do? They're not. Obviously I do it all for KD and LeBron, but Jimmy Butler is a concern, especially you're going to have to.
I'm a playoff Jimmy guy. Dude.
Oh,
I'm gonna send you videos of me getting some push-ups in at 2 a.m. Say grind never stops.
God, 55 games a season. You're coming in here with long
fits in
purple hair.
Fits in perfectly.
I can't.
All I'm saying is, if there's one team I think could run the table from the 10 seed, it's a team with Draymond and Jimmy Butler.
Yeah.
They could also just get suspended and eliminated. But
so I guess final thing on the Lacob piece, and then we got to get out of here. But the Cowboys are always on TV. You're on TV last night.
That's your analogy right there, right?
No, yeah, you brought it up. I think this specific one is interesting. This specific thing, because I think you've brought this up before. Is that why do we hear Jerry Jones and his son Stephen Jones, who I just learned about a couple weeks ago, because he was talking to the media about like what they should be doing as a defensive unit. Why do I care what Stephen Jones has to say about the Dallas? What is going on here?
The GM, because he's the GM.
What is going on here?
At least they're transparent about it. Jerry calls himself the GM. He's not out here hiring Troy Aikman pretending he's the GM. You know what I mean? Like,
and by the way, the Cowboys all flash no substance team. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just classic. Good. That's like a classic guy.
First round out every year. They're not a bad
call
team.
Them soft, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like the classic. Isn't that the classic? Like, hey, I don't know football, so I just draft. You know, it's
on paper it looks good, but it's missing that intangible quality that a football guy, that Bill Belichick would know.
Well,
you know
it's like the Chicago. I'm not saying I know football. I don't. It's like, but sometimes I'm watching the Chicago Bears. It's like, yes, you got Roman Dunze, but Sam, who would you rather have drafted? Right? Would you rather, with the 9th pick, drafted a tackle for Caleb Williams so he's not running for his life, or would you draft Roman Dunze, who's probably great, but it's like, dude, there's great receivers that come out every year.
You know, I get your point. Like, the Cowboys just, you know, Zeke at number 4 and just like all that sort of stuff. Anyway, it's not even about the talent, but I don't know. So I'm a skeptic on that. But we'll see. I hope they prove me wrong. I've said it the whole time. I hope they prove me wrong. We'll end it here. Hey guys, we're going to be on playback Monday night after media availability. Join us.